Okay, gonna need to be extra careful with this one. Highschool DxD, an anime I think needs no introduction. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that the anime is pretty notorious for being one of the premier ecchi anime out there. It's famous for all the reasons you can imagine. I'm sure a lot of you stumbled across it during that era in your teenage years where you were discovering anime and just so happened to go through an ecchi phase. Yeah, I think we've all been there. And Highschool DxD was one that stuck with you for how lewd it was. At first. What I came to realize while watching it was that beneath all the fan service, beneath all the perversion, and beneath all the very cliche anime tropes lies a really good shonen series that plays around with a bunch of cool ideas that could rival some of the big shonen out right now. Dare I say, Highschool DxD might be peak shonen. For the uninitiated, Highschool DxD is a supernatural ecchi harem anime based on a light novel and manga series of the same name, releasing in 2008 with an anime adaptation coming out in 2012. The series would gain a lot of success with its manga at some point, reaching number 2 in the New York Times bestseller list. Now that must have been quite the feat. But yeah, Highschool DxD follows the adventures of Issei Hyodo, as he's reborn as a devil and flung into the supernatural world of angels and devils, working under the command of the great and incredibly iconic Rias Grammary, and her team, the Occult Club. Sounds simple enough, right? But it owns that simplicity and takes things extra. The anime starts off with our main character, Issei, and the first thing you should know about him is that right from the start, he is a huge pervert, a trait that is fundamental to his character. He's so unapologetically a pervert that he doesn't even try to hide it. Everyone from his classmates to his parents know how much of a pervert he is, and while he does get into trouble for his perverted shenanigans, it usually ends up being a slap on the wrist. So Issei, along with his two friends, who are also pervs, are now second years at Kuo Academy, a school that up until recently was primarily an all-girls school. The three of them got into the school for the specific reason of increasing their chances of finding girlfriends since there'd be less competition. But fortunately, none of the girls have standards low enough to want to even breathe the same air as these boys. Well, that is until one day when some random girl from an entirely different school asks Issei out. And Issei, seeing as he's never gotten any action in his entire life, jumps at the opportunity of finally getting a girlfriend. Things seem to be going great for them, but on the evening of their first date, she turns into a fallen angel and straight up kills him. Okay, gotta cut in real quick and say, if you do plan on watching this, I highly recommend you watch this dubbed. The anime's dub is so damn hilarious, carrying the same energy as an abridged series. I found myself laughing way too hard at several points, wondering if this was the actual dub of the anime. Like in this scene, where his girlfriend reveals herself to be a fallen angel, these are the words that come out of his mind. Mind you, this is supposed to be a tense situation right now.
Breasticles! Those are boobs! I am looking at boobs! My little boy eyes have finally grown into manhood, and she's a super hot chick too! What's that old saying? This is a sight for sore eyes? This is totally a sight for... Wait.
You really have to experience this for yourself. Okay, so she transforms and kills him. Her reason being that he's got something really powerful inside him called a sacred gear, but he doesn't know what that is. As he lays there in a pool of his own blood, all he can think about is how he never got to touch any boobs and how he's going to die a virgin. And as his life slowly fades away, he begins to think about Rias, who he had seen several times before, and thanks to the magic circle he had unknowingly received earlier that day, she's summoned to him and thus, he's reborn as a devil. It doesn't take long until he's assimilated into the world of devils, joining Rias' team. So how this works is that when a high-ranking devil creates a servant, they are given a role based on a chess piece. With Rias being the king, she already has 3 other servants under her prior to Issei joining. There's Akuno, the queen, and the strongest servant. She wields incredible magic, able to rain down thunder on enemies. Her key defining trait is how sadistic she is. Then there's Koneko, the rook, the quiet lolly who spends most of her time eating. She boasts incredible strength and durability. She's the tank of the team. And then there's Kiba, the Bishonen Knight. He's the pretty boy that has all the generic girls falling for him. He's like the fast DPS of the team, wielding a magic sword that is also a sacred gear. And finally, Issei is a pawn. Through this chess piece assignment, we get to understand that the person is assigned one piece. However, in some cases they may use up more than one piece. and in Issei's case, he used up all 8 pawn pieces when he was revived. That means there is a lot of potential in Issei, he just needs to unlock it. I have to say, this is a pretty interesting power system. Since characters have properties based on their chess pieces, it means there's a bunch of different functionalities to be applied. This also means that in the case of Issei, he's given the added ability of getting a promotion into any other piece he chooses when he makes it into enemy lines. There's a lot of potential in this, and I hope to see it used a lot more as the story progresses. Still on the topic of Issei, now would be a good time to talk about his other ability, the sacred gear residing in him. He's able to summon this red gauntlet called the Twice Critical, which is said to double his strength. But wait, there's more. His sacred gear is actually that of the legendary Red Dragon Emperor and is said to double his power every 10 seconds, which, theoretically, could give him enough strength to surpass both God and Satan, albeit temporarily. It's called the Boosted Gear, and it's one of the legendary 13 Longinus. So it's got like 3 stacks of names on it, which shows you just how rare it is. This is pure shonen right there. So the first few episodes are mostly just fluff, with the plot not really kicking in until Issei meets this girl. Her name is Asia, a young nun with her own sacred gear called Twilight Healing, which gives her the ability to heal any kind of injury. The two hit it off pretty well, becoming friends as he helps her find a way to the local church, which is a no-no place for devils. So Issei is forced to keep his distance from her. However, that is until one night when he's out running demon errands. He stumbles upon a demon hunting priest and Asia who, plot twist, are actually working for a faction of fallen angels, who is being led by the fallen angel that killed Issei in the first episode. Issei doesn't stand a chance against the priest, but Rias and Ko are able to swoop in and save him just before she is killed a second time. Issei, seeing that Asia is pretty much held against her will by every fallen angel, does what every shonen MC does and sets out to go save her, even though he has to do it alone. But Rias isn't going to let him and has Koneko and Kiba follow along. They storm the bad guys' lairs, and this is where we see Issei show off his pawn properties. Since he's technically behind enemy lines, he's able to promote himself and applies the properties of both the Rook and the Knight on separate occasions. However, he's too late to save Asia as she's had her sacred gear extracted from her, which means death. So he carries her body out of danger, mourning the loss of his friend. The fallen angel from before, who's called Raynell, comes up to finish the job, now with Asia's sacred gear equipped. She mocks him, making fun of how much of a loser he is and how awful their date actually was, which gets him even more infuriated. They fight, but Issei isn't doing too well, and just as he's pushed to the brink, he gets a surge of power which evolves his gauntlet and gives him the edge to take her down. He doesn't have it in him to deliver the final blow, however, as Raynell tries to get some kind of sympathy for him using the face she used when they were dating. And this gets him for some reason. I really don't get why, because they were only together for 3 days, so I wasn't exactly sold on their relationship. But I guess this is to show how good of a person he is deep down beneath all that layer of perversion. Rias, however, has no qualms about terminating her subscription to life. After that, she revives Asia as her bishop, and seeing that the nun has nowhere else to go, sets her up to live in Issei's house. From this setup, you know all the things you think will happen actually happen. And that pretty much concludes the first arc, with the next few episodes just being the crew getting into low stakes scenarios, like in one episode that has Issei and Rias trying to help a woman clad in feudal Japanese armor, obsessed with Japanese culture, win the affection of a guy who dons old Victoria armor. The episode was really damn funny, with the dub taking things to even funnier heights. These few episodes between the two major arcs of the season really helped to flesh out the world and explain a lot more lore to us, all the while being really funny too. The pacing here was just right. But before we get into the next arc, I want to take a bit to clarify a few things here. First off, the name of the anime. You may be wondering, how exactly do you say it? Is it Highschool DxD? Is it Highschool DD? Is it Highschool D&D? Or is it Highschool DD? Well, considering the very lewd nature of the anime, it makes sense to call it Highschool DD. But many just call it Highschool DxD. I personally go with Highschool DD as it has just less syllables. And another thing I need to clarify is where this fits in the whole X timeline. Many may not realize this, but almost any anime with an X in its name is connected in one big timeline. The timeline kicks off with Spy Family, which, depending on if Operation Strix succeeds or fails, breaks into 2 timelines. The bad timeline, which leads into Kiss Sis, and then Rosario Vampire, while the good timeline leads into Servant Service, which is then followed by Highschool DD. However, thanks to the events that happen in Sonic X, with the help of Goku, the two timelines converge, which leads into Hunter x Hunter. You may be wondering why Rosario Vampire is in the same timeline since it has a plus and not an X. Well, a plus is just an X with its axis spun around, implying that it is a spin-off. Now, back to Highschool DxD. The next arc kicks off with Reyes teleporting into Issei's room in the middle of the night and demands his virginity. So unsurprisingly enough, the super pervert is hesitant to do this. Not because he doesn't want to, but because it's all happening so fast and his brain is still processing stuff. But he's a bit too late as another demon teleports into his room. This is Graphia, and she serves as the servant to Reyes' older brother, Sir Zex, as he's better known as Lucifer. Graphia has come to Reyes to discuss the matter of her engagement. That's right, she's being put in an arranged marriage in order to strengthen the pure-blooded demon bloodline, and she's been engaged to this very charming individual, Riser Phoenix, who belongs to one of the three noble demon houses, and he's ready to claim his bride. But Reyes doesn't want that. She wants to be able to choose who she wants to be with, she wants to have her freedom. But Riser is like, screw that, you belong to me. So in an attempt to fight for her freedom, she challenges him to a rating game. Now, a rating game is basically an official match between two demons and their servants where they use chess tactics and all that stuff to defeat their opponents. And if tactics don't work, you just beat the shit out of them. Riser accepts the challenge, mocks Reyes' team, and just to flex, summons his own servants who are also his harem. And this pisses Issei off, because, in case you couldn't tell by now, Issei's big goal is to become a high-ranking demon so that he can get a harem of his own. He can't stand Riser because he's like the bad version of the person he wants to be, and oh, I guess he doesn't want Reyes to be part of his harem too, but it's mostly the first thing. The match is in 10 days, and they use those 10 days to train and prepare. This is where Issei learns how to better use his boosted gear as well as a bit of magic, developing a new technique, which we'll find out later. This is also where we learn the effects things like crosses and holy waters have on devils, as well as the three-way war between the angels, devils, and fallen angels. And later that night, Issei and Reyes are able to have a one-on-one where Reyes talks about how Woe's having a partner being decided for her and how her whole life she's never been seen as Reyes but the daughter of the Grammary House. And Issei says he doesn't care about all that stuff. He likes her for who she is. And this is the moment she begins to fall for him, declaring she will win the fight against Riser. Up until this point, I haven't really been sold on Reyes as a character. Everything I know about her I know through people's opinions of her. They hype her up, calling her the Princess of Ruin who's strong enough to take out fallen angels on her own. In fact, she does so, off screen however, but I'm yet to actively see any big feats from her. So far she's just been the cool, calculating, mysterious type, and now that we do get to see her in action, she becomes the damsel in distress. Where was all that moxie she's said to have all this time? Even her servants have had a lot more time to show off their abilities, and just how strong they are, compared to Reyes who we've only seen stand and be menacing. Maybe my opinion of her will change as the story goes on, but for now, I'm not sold. So the day of the rating game finally comes, and the Grammary team is ready to take Riser and his servants down, despite being outnumbered. Now this is where Highschool DxD's shonen-iness really comes alive. They start off with tactics and all that, but frankly, these were all pretty shallow. The first fight we're treated to is Issei and Koneko versus 3 of Riser's pawns and a rook. Koneko takes on the rook, so it's a rook versus rook fight, while Issei handles the 3 pawns. He's doing pretty well holding off the pawns considering a few episodes ago, one of them was able to one-shot him. This is where he finally reveals the new move he's been working on during his training arc. With a snap of his fingers, every girl he's touched has her clothes completely shredded and blown away. He calls this the dress break. It's a hilarious move and very effective too, but this just makes him even more repulsive to every other girl around him, especially Koneko. They do take their W's and head to the next area. Kiba is also able to 1v3 some other servants too. The team is doing pretty well against the enemies until Koneko gets blown up by Riser's queen. She doesn't die though and is instead retired from the match. Akeno steps in to take on the enemy queen while Kiba and Issei get jumped by the enemy's remaining forces. Kiba faces off an enemy who wields a blade of fire and breaks his own sacred gear, but he summons his new sword instantly. Turns out, in a classic shonen moment, where the ability we thought was the ability wasn't actually the ability, but rather a different ability. His real ability is called Unlimited Blades Works. Oh, sorry, wrong anime. His real ability is called Sword Birth, able to summon as many swords as he needs to. He and Issei team up to take out the rest of the enemies, with Issei using his boosted gear to amplify Kiba's powers and summon a bunch of swords to take them all down in one go. On the other side of things, Akeno is able to actually beat Riser's queen, but she pulls out a full restore and turns the tables on Akeno, taking her out of the game, but doesn't stop there as she goes after Kiba too. She's been on a killing spree. Meanwhile, Rias along with Asia are facing Riser and she's getting pushed back. No matter what amount of damage he dishes out, he's able to instantly regenerate. You know, being a phoenix and all. Issei is able to join the fight but takes big damage from protecting Asia, but he can still go on. Or so we think. All that boosting he's been doing all this time is finally taking a toll on his body, but that still won't keep him down. However, Riser comes to put him out personally, and despite all that wailing, he's still not going down. This is it. This is when Issei goes full shonen and beats his ass, right? Unfortunately, no. Rhea steps in and forfeits right there. She gave up to protect Issei. But I guess they didn't really stand a chance, even though the anime did pull a full cheap tactics. But then again, they're devils, so those aren't exactly cheap tactics. So the game is over when Rias officially becomes Riser's fiancé. Issei passes out and is visited by the dragon within him, the Red Emperor Drake. He tells Issei to get his shit together because soon the White One will show up and they are destined to do battle. And just before he gets more answers, he wakes up and is immediately visited by Graphia. She is there on command of Sir Zex and hands him a magic circle that will teleport him straight to the engagement party. Sir Zex wants to give Issei a chance to fight Riser one-on-one and win Reyes back. And as you expect, he takes up the offer and storms the party. This infuriates Riser just as he's about to have Issei forcefully thrown out. The ruler of the underworld, Sir Zex himself, shows up and endorses the two's rematch. The battle begins and Issei doesn't waste any time showing off his new transformation. Balance Breaker, Boosted Gear, Scale Mail. And it's every bit as cool as it looks. There is a drawback though. Prior to storming the party, he made a deal with the Red Dragon, sacrificing his left arm for more power. But this sacrifice can only let him use the form for 10 seconds, and he plans to make use of all those seconds. It's not enough though, as Issei is still barely keeping up with Riser, but this changes after landing his first blow, which does a lot more damage than it should have. That's because in his hands holds a cross, which is super effective to devils. It should be hurting Issei too, but remember, his left arm now belongs to the dragon, so it doesn't affect him at all. And just as he's about to deliver the final blow, he runs out of time. The armor goes off, but he's not done yet, as he still has one more trick up his sleeve. He pulls out the holy water he got from Asia, and using his gear's ability to amplify others' powers, he amplifies the power of the holy water, which damages Riser so bad he can't regenerate from it. This gives Issei the opportunity to put all his power into one final attack and deliver the final blow, taking down Riser. I have to say, I really liked this fight. I was expecting a lot more shonen power clashing, but ended up seeing a fight that was pretty unique and took advantage of the fact that Riser looked down on Issei, and now Issei had other things in his arsenal to turn the fight in his favor. And it didn't come out of nowhere because it makes sense for Issei to get access to these things since he now lives with Asia, a former nun. If this fight is setting the standard of how fights are going to be in the series moving forward, then I can't wait to see how much more creative the fights can get. So Issei wins the fight, and he wins the girl. They ride off on a griffin where Issei declares how, no matter what happens, he'll always come to save her, and she's so moved by this she kisses him right there, that being both of them's first kiss. But that's not all, she's also moving in with him, just like that. And his parents are cool with it too, somehow. So now Issei has two girls, who are both interested in, by the way, living with him. And that's the end of the first season of Highschool DxD. I had a lot more fun watching it than I thought. Let me confess, I initially went into this ready to rip the anime apart, but as it went on, everything just grew on me. From the plot to the setting and the characters, except Reyes. For a first season, it does a good job setting everything up, leaving a lot open for the next season. My only gripes with it all would be, for an anime from 2012, it looks a bit rough. The art looks off in some cases and the animation isn't anything to write home about. It has its moments, but most of the time isn't all that impressive and is just really passable. Alright, I think it's about time I talked about the elephant in the room. Surprisingly enough, the fan service didn't get in the way of the anime and was somehow able to play into the whole shtick it had going for it. The anime didn't come to a screeching halt when fan service came on. The only time it did spend time oogling was when Issei himself was. This was definitely one of the better uses of fan service in an anime and was much better executed compared to something like Fire Force or Fairy Tail. I personally am not a fan of fan service, but oddly enough didn't find myself cringing and rolling my eyes anytime it came up. I guess you could say it was done pretty tastefully. God, I sound like such a degenerate right now. But yeah, I can see how it can put a bunch of people off considering the girls of the anime are very much in high school. I'm not going to try to defend or criticize this aspect of it because it's not the first to do so. All I can say is that if it's for you, it's for you, and if it's not, it's not.
Last time on Highschool DxD, Issei had just challenged the infamous Riser Phoenix in a fight for the hand of his master, the amazingly powerful high-ranking devil, Rias Gremory. Using the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, he's able to claim victory and in turn, Riz his very own master. Moved by his strength and determination, the Great Devil herself chooses to move in with our hero, leading to many more lose situations. But the times of peace are only fleeting, as a new threat looms over Issei, Rias, and the rest of the Occult Club. Will Issei be able to face this threat? And will he be able to become the Harem King? Tune in now to find out.
What the Opening up, we are immediately greeted with some Rias fan service, which I legally cannot show. Life has become pretty hectic for Issei since Rias moved in. She and Asiya have been butting heads over Issei since they both clearly have feelings for him and want to spend as much time as they can with him. But Issei for some reason is still as dumb as a bag of bricks to catch on to this, as if his brain doesn't remember what happened the night he rescued Rias. I will admit, the back and forth between the two girls got a few chuckles out of me most of the time, which I guess is mostly due to the English voice acting. So the Occult Club gang will be meeting up that same day. However, due to the fact that their club room will be having its spring cleaning, Rias decides to have said meeting in Issei's house. The rest of the day is pretty standard for Issei, getting into the usual pervy antics with his friends. However, we do get introduced to a new character. Her name is Aika, and she looks a little too well designed to be a background character. I'm calling it now, she's either going to become pretty relevant to the plot later, or is actually secretly a bad guy. Issei's time with them is cut short when his left hand starts to throb. If you recall, in the last season, he gave his left hand to the Red Dragon in order to get that super cool transformation, but due to that, his left hand permanently has the gauntlet on. But thanks to Akino's magic, he's able to keep it hidden during the day. But every now and then the magic builds up, which means he needs an emergency visit from her. So he does get to meet her, and according to the logic of the anime, the best way to do this is by sucking the magic out of his arm. And how does she do it? By literally sucking it out of his arm. And this is as sexually charged as it looks. Aside from being pure fan service, this scene also shows us something new in Akino's character development. During the team fight with Riser and his servants, she watched Issei continue to fight when the odds were against him, and watching him storm the engagement party and actually beat Phoenix made her fall for him. And now she wants to get in on that Issei action too. Even more so than the rest because she knows what she's doing is behind Rias' back. So school's over and the gang gets to meet up in Issei's room to hold their meeting, but it doesn't take long before his mom barges in with a photo album to show off to all his friends. All the ladies are enjoying the many baby photos of Issei, but Kiba on the other hand looks rather grim. In one of the photos has Issei, another kid, and a very distinct looking sword. But that isn't just any sword, it's a holy sword, and Kiba seems very into it. Later that night, Issei is out running devil errands. This time he's been summoned by a man. Now he looks a little too well designed to be a background character. Calling it now, he's either going to become pretty relevant to the plot later or is actually secretly a bad guy. Hell, maybe even both. This mystery man who summoned Issei wants nothing more than to just have a drink and chat. I guess stranger danger isn't a thing here. But Issei's visit is cut short when he and the rest of the Occult Club get an emergency request to take out a stray devil. So they all team up and fight it out, but Kiba isn't exactly focusing on the fight, and because of that slip up, almost caused them to fight. Rias isn't too pleased with this and scolds him, but she's also worried about him. Something is weighing down on his mind, and Issei tries to get him to talk about it, but Kiba isn't exactly budging. He leaves with a few words. Kiba tells Issei that he's recently remembered his purpose, the reason why he's alive. and that is revenge. Revenge against the holy sword, Excalibur. This is when Rias gives us a bit of backstory on Kiba and what exactly a holy sword is. Holy swords are the strongest weapons against devils. A simple cut could completely obliterate a devil. They are so powerful that only a select few can attune to these swords and actually wield them, and they are pretty hard to find. But this wasn't going to stop the church. They ran experiments where they attempted to artificially create people with a factor that let them wield holy swords, Excalibur especially. This was called the Holy Sword Project, and as you can imagine, it was incredibly inhumane and gruesome. Worst of all, the project failed, and Kiba is the only survivor. Rubbing minds together, they figure out what triggered Kiba into getting this way, that being the photo of Issei as a kid with that one holy sword in the background. Issei points out how it makes sense now since the kid's family always invited them to church. Meanwhile, in an abandoned church somewhere, two ladies who appear to be part of the church arrive. They seem to be meeting up with a priest, but said priest has just been killed by the crazy rogue priest Fried Zelzen, right in front of Kiba too, who's out sulking in the rain. And as luck would have it, the blade Fried is parading around is none other than Excalibur. Pretty anticlimactic design, but it's a holy blade nonetheless. They fight it out, but it doesn't take long until Fried escapes yet again. I gotta say, this season looks a lot better than the first. Maybe they got a budget increase from all the fat stacks they made showing fat stacks to horny teens, but whatever it is, I'm grateful for it. Character art, movement and action look and feel a lot more polished compared to the stiffness of the first season, making it a lot more pleasing to watch. But where the improvement really shows is in its fan service. Thanks to the better looking art, the fan service looks a lot better. Now with upgraded jiggle physics that compact with some very pronounced slapping effects, but I guess that's to add immersion. I said it before in the previous video, but I just need to reiterate. The fan service in Highschool DxD is some of the better uses of fan service I have ever seen in an anime. And it gets better this season as while it's there, using conspicuous angles and whatnot, it doesn't take away from the anime. Hell, if this didn't have fan service, I don't think it would be as enjoyable as it is now. Side note, I've heard that people don't like it specifically for fan service and all that adult stuff, and while this is valid, the same people go into it knowing what it's about and complain about it. In my opinion, that's just pretty cheap criticism. It's like complaining about a burger that has meat in it. You feel me? I personally used to hate fan service, but watching this series has changed my perspective on it. Damn, I'm over here defending fan service. Past me would be repulsed by me right now. Alright, back to the anime. Issei wakes up with a warning from Drake. Apparently Drake has been sensing a pretty powerful presence around Issei lately, but is unable to tell where it's coming from. He cautions Issei to be on defense as the White One could strike at any moment. This is where we get some more dragon lore. The White One, aka the Vanishing Dragon, Albion. Drake and Albion are known as the two Sky Dragons and have been fighting for centuries. Transferring from host to host, the two along with their hosts are tied by destiny to always encounter each other and eventually fight. Issei is a bit uncertain about this, his conviction is starting to waver, but Drake assures him that if he does get stronger, women will flock to him for sure, fueling his drive to become the Harem King. The Occult Club has had its cleaning done and the crew are back to the usual. However, on the way to the club room, Issei and Asuya notice a sealed off room with warnings to stay away. Whatever this is, we'll just have to find out later. The club members meet up with Kiba noticeably absent and everyone is worried about him. So Rias gives us even more lore about him and his quest for vengeance. Turns out during a war centuries ago, Excalibur was shattered into 7 pieces, which were then reformed into 7 entirely different swords with different properties, all of which bear the name Excalibur. The Holy Sword Project tried to attune children into using the sword, but they all failed, with many losing their lives, and when the experiment was deemed a failure, the remaining children were to be disposed of. Kiba was the only one who was able to escape, and at that moment Rias found him. Seeing his determination to stay alive and get revenge, she made him a devil. Hearing his backstory, Issei, Asuya and Koneko can only help but feel even more worried about Kiba. The next day, the club is visited by the 2 mysterious women from the church. This is Zenobia and Irina, and they both wield Excaliburs. They inform us that the fallen angels have stolen 3 of the 7 Excaliburs and they are here in this town to retrieve them and don't want interference from Rias and her gang. And just as they are about to leave, Zenobia takes notice of Asuya. She sees Asuya as the same as all the other people of the church see her, as a heretic witch who betrayed the church. This cuts too deep for Asuya, reopening some past wounds. She questions Asia's faith, asking her if she still believes in God, and Asia still does. Zenovia takes offense to this and offers to execute her right there, and Issei is not having any of that. Doing what he does best, he challenges them to an unofficial battle, and Kiba joins in, rather smugly too. The two ladies pull out their Excaliburs. Irina wields the Mimic Excalibur, which lets her change its shape to anything, and Zenovia wields the Destruction Excalibur, which, well, destroys. It seems our boys were all talk as they easily get beaten by the church girls, so not only were their bodies beaten, but their pride too. This loss only adds to Kiba's frustrations, and so he temporarily leaves the group to go on a solo mission to destroy the Excaliburs. Still worried about their friend, Issei, along with Koneko with the help of Saji, another devil in their school serving under the student council president and fellow high-ranking devil Sona, come up with a plan to team up with the church girls and Kiba to help them find and dispose of the fallen angels, as well as retrieve the Excaliburs. This is all behind their masters' backs, mind you. So that very same night, we cut to the mystery man who's been summoning Issei frequently to hang out. He's kinda bummed cause Issei didn't get to hang out with him tonight, but his loneliness is cut short when yet another mysterious man, this time with silver hair, shows up. Who exactly are they and what are they up to? We'll just have to find out later. Our unlikely crew are able to track down the Excalibur and free it along with it. They do a bit of battle until another priest steps in. This old man is Valba, and he's the one who spearheaded the Holy Sword project. Seeing him triggers Kiba's PTSD, but before the fight can go on, the two of them retreat yet again. But this time the church girls as well as Kiba give chase. The rest of the crew want to follow suit but are stopped by their masters and then get punished for it. Meanwhile, the crew that did give chase somehow got split up, with Irina winding up alone where she has to fight Fried one-on-one, but unfortunately she doesn't stand a chance. Fried is about to put her down permanently until someone stops him, his supposed master, a leader class fallen angel by the name of Kokobil. They use Irina as a bait to lure the others to them. Here, he declares destruction on their town and Rias herself. His goal is to lure Rias' older brother, Sir Zex, to take him down, inciting a new war. And why is he doing this? Well, he's just bored of everything. He craves the violence and destruction and finds boredom in peace. That's a textbook villain right there. What's more, he's going against the wishes of the Governor General of the Fallen Angels, Azazel, and acting out on his own since Azazel himself doesn't want war. So kicking off his plan, he starts with the destruction of their school. And the crew immediately give chase. Their goal is to defeat Kokobil before Sir Zex can make his way to them. And chaos immediately ensues. Not only are they fighting a bunch of Cerberus dogs, but the priest Valba is at the back successfully fusing the Excaliburs into one for free to use. Things really start heating up when Kokobil finally takes them on directly. Even with the combined powers of Rias and Akeno, they are not enough to hold him back, and as they deal with him, Issei, Kiba and the rest face the priests. They too are having a difficult time going up against the reforged Excalibur. And this is when Valba hits us with a little bit of information about how the project actually worked. What they did was extract a certain gene from their subjects. Let's call it a Holy Sword factor. This gene extract is then condensed into a crystal, which is then put into others, which lets them wield Excalibur. Zenovia is shocked by this because the crystal looks exactly like the one the church did in fact put into Irina, and she's horrified by that. Kiba is able to grab a hold of said crystal, the very one that contains the essence of his fallen friends, and by harnessing that power, he's able to do something extraordinary. He achieves a balance breaker. So what is a balance breaker? It's a phenomenon that occurs when a sacred gear and their user fully synchronize. Their will goes against the very laws of nature and the universe, which allows them to perform feats that should be considered impossible. It's basically a hacks. Issei's cool transformation from the last season is also one of these balance breakers. And Kiba's balance breaker? Well, he's able to create a sword that combines both holy and demonic energy, calling it the Sword of Betrayal. See what I mean by hacks? He's able to perfectly meld holy and demonic powers into a blade, two forces that naturally oppose each other. But this isn't just the end of cool swords galore, as Zenovia herself pulls out the legendary holy sword, Durando. And whoa mama, that's a big sword. I mean, just look at it. So yeah, the Durandal is a pure holy sword that is said to be able to cut anything, even reality. It's a sword so powerful that finding someone to wield it is nigh impossible, but Zenovia is the only one alive able to perfectly attune with it. Man, there is just so much lore in this anime. So with the two cool swords at hand, they are able to take down Freed and destroy the Excalibur. Seeing this feat gives Valba an epiphany, but before he can reach a conclusion, he's struck down by Kokobil. That's right, he's still a threat. So they all try to stop him yet again, Issei transferring his powers to amplify Rias, but it's still not enough, even with more lightning from Akino. Kokobil is sort of pleased with Akino's lightning. He mentions how her power is very similar to that of Barkiel, another fallen angel leader. But the mention of that name only makes her furious. Apparently, whoever this Barkiel is, she doesn't want to be associated with them. Turns out, that's her father. The fight continues, but everyone is really starting to reach their limits. That is when Kokobil lets slip a very important bit of information. God is dead. And God remains dead. And they have killed him. This reveal actually had me gasping at my screen. God, along with the 4 great devil kings, were killed during the three-way war. So this brings the question, who have the Christians and the church been praying to? Where are all these blessings even coming from? That would be from Archangel Michael, who's been running the system all this time. As you can tell, this is the biggest shock to Asia and Zenovia. Issei had just about had it and musters up whatever main character energy he has left to fight Kokobil. With Rias promising him to let him suck her boobs if she wins, he's suddenly filled with a burst of energy. He's actually able to fight back Kokobil, but just as it looks like things are going in Issei's favor, the fight gets interrupted. A mysterious being clad in white armor enters the battlefield. This is the Vanishing Dragon, and with no words he attacks Kokobil. Kokobil retaliates, but the white dragon puts him down with one of his unique abilities called Divine Dividing, which cuts the power of whatever he touches in half every 10 seconds and then transfers that power to the user. It's pretty cool contrasting abilities considering the red dragon doubles the user's power every 10 seconds. Albion, acting under the orders of Azazel, goes on to give a serious nerf to Kokobil before taking him down in an instant. He's just about done, ready to take the beating body of Kokobil before Issei steps in. He's super pissed at Albion for basically cock-blocking him and stopping him from getting titty time with Rias. And so, their rivalry has been established. That's pretty much it for all the fighting. Things are finally starting to calm down. Kiba apologizes to Rias and the rest of the club, vowing once again to forever protect her. Right after he gets his own punishment. The school life is back to normal yet again, but this time with a new member. Zenovia, the holy sword user, joins their ranks as the second knight. Her finding out that God is dead was a big no-no by the church, which led her to being exiled. This in turn has left her feeling purposeless. So with nowhere else to go, she begged Rias to take her in as a knight. You know what this means? One more potential addition to Issei's future harem. And this is where the first arc of the season comes to an end. However, that's before we get yet another reveal that the man who's been summoning Issei all this time to hang out is actually Azazel himself. Honestly, I just love how this anime handles foreshadowing, build-up, and reveals. Every big reveal that has been given to us has been set up in one way or the other from the first season, so when the build-up finally pays off, it doesn't feel like it came out of nowhere. Once again, I am blown away with just how well thought out the series is. I went from enjoying this ironically to genuinely being invested in the story. And the world building? Wow, the world building. This is some of the finer cases of world building I have ever seen. Better than stuff like Naruto. It feels like we've been learning something new about the world with every episode, slowly easing us into this rather unique world. Things don't just happen, there's a certain logic and reasoning behind them. The system behind the angels, the devils, the fallen angels, and the way each of them run things just works so well, with a lot of them sharing underlying issues of trying to maintain peace in some way or form in order to preserve their bloodlines. The second season made me realize this silly little shonen about a pervert who wants to see boobs all the time is a lot deeper than it looks. And it's honestly a shame a lot of people aren't able to look past the fan service, because there is a really good shonen in there. But I guess if you can't, these videos will sort of help you get the main gist of the series, which, if you're enjoying so far, consider leaving a like and maybe subscribe too, so you don't miss out on the next addition to this series. With enough likes, I'll even get more motivated to cover the next season. It's alright, that's enough shilling, back to the anime. After all that crazy fighting, we get our obligatory pool episode. There isn't really a lot of plot heavy stuff that happens in here, but there are a few character related stuff that do happen. Akeno is getting a lot bolder with her advances towards Issei, and this has gotten Rias a bit jealous. Next, Zenovia has come up with a new purpose. She wants to experience the joys of motherhood, but it can't be with just anyone. It's gotta be with someone with strong genes, and who else could that be other than Issei? That's right, she wants Issei's seed. After that, the club gets a visit from Rias' older brother on business. He's scouting their school for hopes of hosting a conference din there soon. So while he's in town, they spend the night at Issei's house, where the two men have a pretty interesting conversation. He gives Issei the idea that since he's able to transfer his power to other people, what if he transferred it into boobs instead? Would it theoretically make them bigger? This gives Issei an epiphany, but his meager brain is unable to understand what would even happen if he tries. This boy cracks me up. Then Issei meets the White Dragon host, Vali, a total edgelord. And we also get some more dragon lore. During the three-way war, lots of other creatures were made to pick sides or face extinction, but the dragon race didn't cause they didn't want anything to do with the war. However, as the war broke out, two dragons, the white and red dragons, got into a fight that went on for years. Why are they fighting? Hell, even Drake doesn't remember why. But then the fighting became so ferocious that all the warring factions had to team up and fight the two dragons, which only angered them even more, leading them to attack the factions and even God too. Eventually they were stopped, sliced up into pieces, and their souls sealed in humans as sacred gears. But that didn't stop them. Using their hosts, they would eventually find each other again and fight over and over again. Now that's pretty cool. Alright, the next few things that happened aren't exactly that big of a deal. We get introduced to a new character, one of the 4 Devil Kings, Seraphol Leviathan, who is also Sona's older sister. She likes to cosplay magical girls. We also meet Rias' dad, and they have a swell time back at Issei's house. And Sir Zex leaves us with some final words. He tells Rias it's about time she released her second bishop. It's surprising cause Issei and Asia are just hearing about this for the first time. The second bishop was sealed away because Rias wasn't strong enough to contain them, but now seems like a good time. Remember that sealed off room a few episodes ago? Yep, turns out that this is where the second bishop is being sealed, and it's finally time to release them. This is Gasper. Looks like a girl, sounds like a girl, but that is in fact a dude. A socially awkward hikikomori who loves to cross-dress. That's not all, as before he was turned into a devil, he was a half-human, half-vampire. He's even got his own sacred gear, the Forbidden Battle Reveal, that gives him the ability to stop time. But he can't control said ability, which is why he was sealed away. So they try to train him and get him used to the rest of the crew, and in the midst of it all, Azazel shows up to give them a few tips on training him. He's not doing too well though and eventually chickens out. This is when Issei gets a one-on-one moment with him. Gasper is worried his powers will destroy those that are close to him, which is why he's so afraid. Issei can relate because he too is somewhat fears his power, but his desire to protect his friends is stronger than his fear. The two bond over this and become friends. Issei also admits to being jealous of Gasper's power, because if he could stop time, well, needless to say, you know where this is going. Wait a minute, isn't this the plot of that one time stop hentai? Well, if you know, you know. Gasper is kind of touched by this because nobody has ever been jealous of his power. All his life he's been alienated because of his power, so hearing someone say they were jealous was really heartwarming to him. Gasper is inspired by Issei's pure horniness and is motivated to learn to control his power. The other girls of the club also help Gasper with his social anxiety by putting a paper bag on his head to help him communicate better. And it works! After this, Issei is invited to a shrine by Akeno where a very important figure wants to meet him. That being the Archangel Michael himself. Michael bestows a holy blade onto Issei, the Dragon Slayer Ascalon. Michael's reasoning for giving him the sword is simply because he wants to give Issei a power boost, in case of emergencies, and that he wants Issei to help in bringing together all 3 factions. Better to have him on their side than against them after all. Issei agrees and assimilates the sword into his gear, giving him a cool new upgrade. Issei does have a few questions for Michael, but unfortunately he doesn't have time and promises to answer them the next time they meet, which will be soon. After this, Issei and Akeno get a moment together. He asks about Abdil and what her relationship with Barkiel is. She reveals to us that she is in fact the daughter of the fallen angel leader. She was actually a half-human, half-fallen angel before becoming a devil, leaving her with mismatched wings. She's been wanting to tell Issei about this since the moment she fell for him, but couldn't find the courage because she was afraid he'd hate her since he has a bad history fallen angels. You know, being catfished and killed by one after all. But Issei doesn't care about that. He accepts Akeno for who she is, regardless of her lineage, hitting her with that MC Riz. Right there and then, she decides she doesn't mind being Issei's third, willingly throwing herself into his up-and-coming harem. Despite how much of a pervert he is, he's dumb as fuck and still doesn't seem to tell that the ladies want to get all up in his meat. And as luck would have it, Ria shows up yet again, seething with jealousy. In that moment of insecurity, Ria asks Issei, if Issei does dream of having a harem one day, would she have a spot in there? But Issei, still friggin' stupid, is all like, nah, you're my master, you're way too good for my perverted pipe dream. That doesn't make her too happy. Despite everything and how Issei treats her, she feels so far away. It really makes you think, she's actually right. The way Issei talks to her compared to the way he talks to someone like Asuya are completely different. Despite the fact he's all about Ria's booby time, it still feels like there's a wall between them. A wall that Issei hasn't realized he's put up. Where their relationship will go from here, only time will tell. The day of the super important conference is here. All the big leaders from all the three factions arrive. Archangel Michael with Irina, Sir Zex with Surfall and their retainers, Azazel with Valley, and Rias with the rest of the Occult Club, minus Gasper and Koneko. They're basically there to talk about the actions of Kokobel and his motivations, as well as finally make peace with everything and focus on rebuilding bloodlines. But things are cut short when the school is attacked by a mysterious group. They're humans with magical abilities. They call themselves wizards. They capture Gasper and force him to use his ability to stop time and wreak havoc on the conference. Time does stop, but the powerful ones are able to not be affected by it. Valley transforms and deals with the attacking wizards, while Rias and Issei teleport to go rescue Gasper and Koneko. Just then, the one behind the attack reveals herself. This is Kateria Leviathan, a descendant of the first Leviathan. You might be confused seeing as she has the same title as Surfall, but they aren't exactly related. The name Leviathan is just a title given to anyone strongest enough to claim it, and Kateria was the one who lost the title, which has made her super salty since she's a direct descendant of the first Leviathan. Azazel takes her on and knows that she's got a very peculiar aura about her, one that a devil normally wouldn't be able to possess, but she doesn't tell him much about it. I guess we will just have to find out about it later. Meanwhile, Rias and Issei are able to find Gasper and Koneko, and with Issei offering his blood to Gasper, he's able to fully release and take control of his powers, helping them nab the win and return to the main group. So now the big final season battle really starts. Everyone is throwing hands and showing what they're made of, and this is when Azazel pulls out something he's been working on for some time now. He's somehow able to create an artificial sacred gear akin to that of Issei's, the Downfall Dragon Spear, and he's able to balance break with it, transforming him into the Downfall Dragon, another armor. Not a cool name, but its design goes really hard. With this transformation, he's able to take down Kateria, pretty effortlessly too, yet he's not satisfied with its performance. Just as it looks like things are finally about to settle, Valley attacks Azazel, who is honestly not surprised about it in the slightest. Turns out Valley is part of a group called the Chaos Brigade, and that's Chaos with a K, led by the Ouroboros dragon, Orphis, who we actually saw a few episodes back conversing with Valley. Man, there are actually a lot of important names being slung around, so I totally understand if you can't remember all of them. Well, there's more, as Valley is actually the descendant of the great devil king Lucifer, and thanks to the fact that his mother was human, he's a half-devil, which is why he's able to become the White Dragon's host. So he's so special, his existence alone is nothing short of impossible. The more we find out about him, the more he really does contrast Issei. He looks down on Issei, disappointed in the fact that this is his rival of all people. So disappointed that he claims he's going to kill his parents and then his friends, so that'll give Issei the goal of revenge. Issei is incredibly pissed by this and activates his balance breaker. The two fight, and this is the hypest fight in the season, nay, the entire series so far. And can we just take a moment to appreciate that their armor isn't rendered in CG? As you'd expect, Issei isn't doing too well against someone who cuts his power in half every 10 seconds. This does let him notice that Albion does have a sort of energy cap. When he reaches the limit, he disperses the leftover energy from his wings. This is when Issei gets the bright idea to transfer so much power into Albion that he overloads the dragon, causing the armor to break. But Valley isn't done yet. He immediately reactivates his armor. And this is when Issei gets another bright idea. He picks up one of the broken pieces of Albion's armor, and with inspiration from Kiba, he attempts to absorb the White Dragon's power. And he actually does. Behold, the Dividing Gear. Albion responds too by showing off yet another ability. Honestly, they just keep one-upping each other throughout this fight, and I am here for it. The ability lets him have reality itself. Azazel then pulls off a Galaxy Braid move. He warns Issei that if Albion is able to have anything in reality, that means he's able to have Rias' boobs. The thought of that alone shatters Issei. A world where Rias has normal sized boobs? Impossible. Fueled by the power of Horny, Issei multiplies his power by 1,000,000 and really wails on Valley. This scene was just as hyped as it was hilarious. But Valley is still not going down. He's about to show off yet another big move when, just then, another character storms into the battlefield. From his getup alone, you can tell who exactly he is. His name? Baiko. He's a descendant of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King himself. And he's here to get Valley. They have another mission at hand, to go fight the Norse gods. That's right, in this moment, the scope of the world just got 10 times bigger. As cool as this is, it's not really surprising considering everything else we've dealt with up until now has borrowed elements from different mythologies and religion. So Baiko leaves the valley and the battle finally comes to an end. And with it comes a new era of peace. Seeing as now is a good time, Issei makes a request of Michael. He begs him to let Asia and Zenobia be able to pray again. It's honestly really sweet, and this is when Zenobia falls for him. Honestly, this is some of the better harem progression I have ever seen. They don't just fall for Issei because he's the main character. Despite all the perversion, he's really a good guy, always looking out for those closest to him. He can be really wholesome, and it's that wholesomeness that really draws the girls to him. We all know that every main female character will eventually fall for him one way or the other by the end of the story, but I guess it's actually nice to see the moments they do fall for him, unlike most isekai protagonists that just attract women simply by existing. Anyway, things are back to normal for the Occult Club. However, Azazel has now joined them as the club's supervisor. He's going to serve as a mentor to the rest and train them to master their sacred gears. That's not all, as Sir Zex has realized that the best way for Issei to get stronger is by being in the midst of women. So starting today, every female member of the club will be moving into Issei's house. The house that will soon be remodeled to accommodate all of them. And so, the season comes to an end. I was really blown away just how much fun this season was compared to the first. From the polish to the action and the world building, there was never a dull moment throughout the anime's run. This season alone left me even more invested in the story and eager to check out the next season. Where the plot goes from here, I literally have no idea, but oddly enough, I can't wait to see just how absurd the anime gets. If you still haven't been convinced to watch the series, I highly implore you to do so, as you are seriously missing out.
Last time on Highschool DxD, our horny hero Issei had just faced the White Dragon host Valley, a member of the sinister Chaos Brigade. Their fight ends in a stalemate with Valley eager to see our hero grow and be a worthy rival to him. The Occult Club are able to survive once again, this time with new changes coming. Governor General Azazel of the Fallen Angels joins the crew as a mentor, and by order of Sir Zex has every female move into Issei's house for special training. With his harem ever increasing, will Issei be strong enough to protect them the way he protects his virginity, or will he finally get laid? Find out now in Highschool DxD.
If you recall, every single girl in the club was ordered to move into Issei's house, since Sir Zex figured out that Issei is fueled by the power of Horny. He's bound to get stronger just from constantly being around them. But it doesn't stop there, cause Rias has ordered the house to be renovated to accommodate all of them. So their house goes from this to this in the span of a night. And Issei's parents are super cool with this. I mean, I would too if I got a mansion free of charge. So the bigger house means a bigger bed for Issei, which also means more girls that can fit in it. And he is reveling in it. Or he tries to, but his mind has been clouded lately with flashbacks of Raynell and all the bad things she did to him and Asia. Maybe he's finally processing the breakup. It's the last day of school just before summer break and everyone is excited for it, making summer plans and all that. Well, except Koneko. She seems to be really out of it. Smells like a character arc is coming. Which is great because throughout the anime, Koneko has been in the background most of the time, so she's never left an impression on me. Most of the time she spoke, she only said a line or two. The only thing that really stood out to her was her super lolly strength and the fact that she was the only one who really reprimands Issei for his perverted antics. So I'm eager to see where her story goes. The club's plan for summer break have already been decided by Rias. They're all going to the underworld, and they waste no time heading there. This change of setting is a welcomed one. I didn't realize it up until now, but the anime had pretty bland and repetitive set pieces, cycling through Issei's room, the club room, and then the school grounds. Every single arc had their battles and climax take place in the schoolyard, which didn't really help to make them feel all that epic and climatic. So hopefully with the underworld we get to see more diverse locations. The crew head to the underworld via Demon Train, but their ride is suddenly cut short when they all get forcefully teleported out of the train. But before they can process what just happened, a dragon shows up and immediately starts attacking. They try to coordinate themselves, but Koneko rushes in and gets punished for it. The dragon proves to be too much for them to handle, and just as things are looking grim, Azazel and Rhea show up to stop the dragon. Turns out, this was all a test for them. That's right, this vacation to the underworld is actually a thinly disguised training arc. Or so I'd like to believe. This dragon is called Tanin, an old friend of Drake, and he's here to help with their training. But that'll be all for today because it's time for their obligatory bath. The only noteworthy thing to come from this scene is Azazel proving why he's the smartest character in the entire series. He shows Issei that there's more to just squeezing melons. The true joy comes from poking them and the reactions that come with them. And this has opened Issei's eyes once again to the limitless potential of boobs. I swear, Azazel is like the only one that seems to understand that horny Issei equals powerful Issei, and the fact that only he can come up with new ways to motivate Issei shows how dense the rest of the cast is. Just then, we cut to the Chaos Brigade. Biko is having a conversation with a mysterious cat lady, a Nekomata by the name of Kuroka. She doesn't care too much about the plans the brigade has, all she wants is to get her little sister back. Who is that little sister? It's Koneko. Which isn't really that big of a surprise because the anime OP spoils it for you. Yeah, the OP does this a lot. Characters are revealed long before they debut in the anime, so if you really hate spoilers, skipping the OP is optimal. Moving on, we get a training montage of all the characters and their custom main training routines. Koneko had pushed herself too far and goes to recuperate, so Issei goes to check up on her and notices her cat ears. And Rias comes to give us some backstory. I don't know, but something about Rias being the one to dump backstory about her servants to us 3 times in a row now doesn't rub me the right way. I guess I'd rather hear it from the character themselves. So, Koneko's backstory is that long ago there were 2 Nekomata sisters. They were orphans and had nowhere to go until they were picked up by a devil, with the older sister eventually becoming a servant to said devil. But by turning into a devil, the power she had hidden inside came forth. The overwhelming power led her to lose control and kill her master before disappearing. She became too powerful, annihilating any devil that came after her. Fearing that the younger sister would become like the older sister, they planned on disposing of her, but Serzek stepped in and took responsibility over the younger sister before passing her on to Rias in hopes of giving her a more fulfilling life. Yep, that's Koneko's backstory. We don't get to dwell on it because immediately after that, we're thrown into a huge gala where all the high-ranking devils are meeting. Which means we're about to meet even more characters. There's Princess of the Agres family Sigvaria, Syra Og, the #1 strongest young devil, and Zephador, who takes the trophy as the worst character designed in the series so far. There's also this obviously shady looking guy, but we don't get his name just yet. Oh, and Raizo's younger sister is here too, and she definitely has the hots for Issei. They'll all eventually come back later in the plot, but right now we're focusing on Koneko, who's dipped out of the party. No, she's not like your average introvert, she just felt her sister's energy and went to chase after it. Issei and Rias follow suit. She does in fact meet her sister, and we get a bit more insight into Koneko's internal turmoil. She's been watching everyone else improve and get stronger while she herself feels left behind. She's been struggling with herself, rejecting the Nekomata side of hers because it reminds her way too much of her sister, which is why she purely relies on her fists. Kuroka isn't just here for her sister, but here to carry out an attack on the huge party being held. The party where Odin just arrived in. The 2 sisters confront each other. Kuroka wants Koneko to join the brigade and Koneko doesn't want to. She has chosen to stand strong as Rias' Rokan family, accepting herself from then on. Meanwhile, the Angels, Devils, Fallen Angels, and Odin are just about to sign a peace treaty but get interrupted by Loki. Back to Issei, Koneko, and Rias, battle breaks out with Tanin also joining in to face off Biko.
Kids, I have a plan. While I slap this monkey around, you guys pound that pussy.
This fight doesn't look all that great. Coming off the second season, which was filled with a lot of hype, I had a lot of expectations going into season 3, especially in the animation department. Season 2 raised the bar in terms of quality and polish, an upgrade from the first season, and I had hoped season 3 would be even better. But so far I haven't been all that impressed. So back to the fight. Like every other fight, Issei gets folded. I'm starting to see a pattern here. And Issei too is having an internal monologue about this exact pattern. Getting beat up every time he tries to protect his friends can be pretty frustrating. It's been 3 seasons and Issei still can't keep up with the meta, getting power crept with every new unit released. But that doesn't mean he's going to stop. He's figured out a way to get a boost and balance break, by poking Rias' fun bags. And it works! This never gets old. Every time he balance breaks, he gets a bit more badass. The bad guys get pushed back and retreat for now. They'll be back, that's for sure. And I guess this is where Koneko's arc ends. She accepts the necromancer side of hers and prepares herself to face her sister head on the next time they meet. It was a pretty short and rather quick arc. Honestly, kind of disappointing. What this arc really did was show a problem the series had with its supporting cast in the occult club. Aside from Akeno and sometimes Asia, the rest of them just stand around and react most of the time they are on screen. And even when they did have arcs where they played major roles in, like Kiba in the Excalibur arc, they were sort of the B plot in it. So even now, with the whole Chaos Brigade attacking the party, it feels like Koneko's arc was shoehorned in just so we can get her development done and have her finally fawn over Issei. Moving on, all the bigwigs are discussing the recent attack on them. They were able to take care of it pretty quickly by just teleporting Loki out of the place, but they know he's going to be back. And they've got to prepare themselves for it while waiting for Odin to return with Mjolnir. So Rhea selects herself and her team to act as a diversion to keep Loki busy and buy time. They waste no time in moving out. The team consists of Rias, Issei, Akeno, Zenobia, Koneko, Kiba, Sona and her 2 servants, Irina and the Valkyrie Roseweiss. And the moment they arrive, Loki emerges with him and his legendary monsters. Oh wait, I guess those are his children. There's a lot of fighting going on and a few things of note happen. Irina has been reincarnated as an angel, Koneko accepts and shows off her necromancer powers. Seeing her, Akeno accepts her fallen angel side and merges her lightning with light to rain down holy thunder. While it looks like things are going well for them, Loki reminds them that he is a god and will not have his plans for Ragnarok foiled, showing off his almighty power. But before they all get wiped out, Odin arrives in the nick of time to deliver Mjolnir, ordering Issei to wield it. And just as he's about to grab it... Yikes, that looks really bad. In the arms of Rias, he takes his last breath. Everyone is shaken up by this, but no one is as furious as Rias. Are we about to finally see her kick ass? Not quite. Loki isn't all that bothered. He commands Fenrir to throw down the hammer, but it's immediately interrupted by the Chaos Brigade who capture Fenrir. Turns out that was their real goal all this time. Kuroka, along with a new face Arthur who wields the holy blade Coldbrand, shows up and dognaps Fenrir as per Vali's orders. The distraction was enough time to get Issei revived. Earlier during the party, Issei had received a gift from Ryder's little sister, which was actually a phoenix tear, basically a full restore. And now he gets a hold of Mjolnir, boosting it up and delivers the final blow to Loki, who, just before he's defeated, curses all of them. Like major bad mojo cursing. And so the battle comes to an end. They all wonder what the brigade wanted with Fenrir. Turns out the only reason Vali wanted Fenrir was because he wanted a dog. That's it. I'm not saying this makes sense, but I understand. And so the curtains close on this arc. The club heads to the human world and Koneko has cozied up to Issei. So things are going back to normal. Akeno appears to be having some kind of internal turmoil. Smells like a character arc is coming. so she asks Issei out on a date. The two have lots of fun, and thanks to some hijinks, they end up at the Love Hostel streets. Akeno is way down bad, but just before they can, Issei gets cock-blocked by Odin and Barkel, Akeno's dad. The three of them sit down for a talk. He questions her on why they were at a Love Hotel street, and she just unloads all the daddy angst she's been bottling up for who knows how long. Backstory time. So, Akeno's mom was a shrine maiden who came across the wounded Barkel and nursed him back to health, with them falling in love and Akeno soon coming after. But when her fallen angel wings began to sprout, the neighbors caught wind of this and hunted her and her mother down, which led to the death of her mother. Her father was nowhere to be seen at that time. Perhaps finding milk over there was pretty hard. So she ran and ran until she couldn't run anymore, which was when she met Rias. Akeno is really distraught by this and throws herself at Issei, wanting to do the devil's tango to help her forget all the grief she's feeling. And respect to Issei, despite how much of a horny kid he is, he doesn't go along with her. He can see that this isn't what she needs right now, and he clearly hesitates. And then something weird happens. The two of them sort of mind meld and they peer into her memories and true inner thoughts. This helps her truly come to terms with her unresolved feelings and her past. And so she takes the first step in patching things up with her father. How wholesome. Her arc is a short one that is resolved in one episode. I'm really glad of this anime's fast pacing. It's thanks to that it's able to put 2 arcs per season, which makes it feel like we're moving forward. However, I can't help but feel like the anime might be a bit too fast paced, sacrificing a lot of the smaller character moments. How it usually goes is after a big fight of the arc, the next episode that follows is one that has them doing smaller stuff, like going to the pool or something like that. This serves as a palate cleanser for the rest of the action that comes in the next arc. But if it's one thing that feels lacking, is how the supporting cast don't really have interpersonal dynamics. We've got Asia and Zenobia who get along really well with their whole former church girl gimmick, and then we have Koneko and Gasper being the whole Lolly and Shota duo that act like siblings. There aren't really any other unique interactions between the rest of the crew. Like, I'd love to see the kind of stuff Koneko and Zenobia get into, or Akeno and Kiba. They all just sort of remain in a vacuum and only ever really converse when they are reacting to something. But I think the one who really gets the short end of the stick is Kiba. He's almost never present during the calmer moments of the series. Maybe because he's the only other male in the group and they don't want him taken away from Issei, but even after his whole arc, he's often just there filling up space. At least Gasper has a leg up on him because he gets moments with Koneko and even gets put in the fan service spotlight from time to time. Guess it's cause of the cross-dressing. Justice for my boy Kiba, man, like, he deserves to be fan serviced too. Moving on with the story, Irina has now transferred to their school and will become a part of their gang, though she'll be acting under Archangel Michael and not as a servant of Rias. Also, during Odin's visit, he left behind Roseweiss, who now has nowhere to go and will now be crashing at Issei's house with the rest of them. Later on, Issei and Asia are out and about town where they run into this guy, who showed up earlier in the season during the devil party. He's way too interested in Asia because they actually have a history. He's the first devil she ever healed with her sacred gear, which caused her to be exiled from the church. His name is Theodora Astaroth, and he wants Asia to become his bride. She's surprised by this, but Rias assures her that if she just ignores him, he'll eventually go away. They're all throwing a welcome party for Irina and Roseweiss when Azazel shows up with something interesting. Issei's perverted antics have now become popular in the underworld. He's got a whole documentary and such. They especially love his heroic exclamations about boobies. This feels incredibly meta because I think a lot of the real world fans of the series love Issei for that, myself included, and now he's been dubbed the Breast Dragon Emperor. Hijinks and fan service aside, the plot finally moves forward. The Demon World will be holding a rating game, a tournament among all the young devils. That's right, we're finally going to have a tournament arc. It's about damn time! And their first opponent will be Theodora, the guy that has been flooding Asia with love letters and gifts in order to win her affection, which has got Issei a bit jealous. And speak of the devil, he shows up the next day. He's come with the intention of trading bishops but gets turned down. He wants Asia through any means necessary and won't take no for an answer. Some more hijinks and fan service ensue, and Issei shares a special moment with Zenobia. And we move on to the rating game. Or So we thought. The moment the crew arrives, they are immediately swarmed by devils who belong to an old faction from before the war. They've been set up, and in the midst of the chaos, Deodora swipes Asia. Turns out he's been making deals with the Chaos Brigade all to get his hands on Asia. So once again, Asia is the damsel in distress. Oh joy. They make it to him, but he forces them into a rating game where if they lose, Asia will become his. They've got to split up and take on his servants, Rias, Kiba and Akino on one side and Issei and the rest on the other. The fight goes well enough with Issei landing a dress break on all of them, but that doesn't seem to work as the ladies just keep fighting still in the nude. Yeah, I can't show this fight. Issei does show off a new ability he picked up during that time he mind melded with Akino. With his new ability, he's able to read the mind of his opponents, or rather, listen to the voices of their boobies. He calls this move titty translation booby lingual. God, the imagination of this boy. And thanks to that, they are able to easily defeat the enemy. Same goes for Rias' side too. The whole team moves on to the next floor ready to face the enemy knights, but imagine their surprise when the one waiting for them is none other than the psycho priest, Freed. This guy is like the Team Rocket of the anime. Anyway, he's part of the Chaos Brigade now, and he shows off his new grotesque transformation, as well as drops some exposition on us. Turns out all the servants they had just defeated were all former nuns. Yeah, Deodora has a thing for turning nuns into devils. He gets off corrupting fair maidens like Asia is his next conquest. Her getting exiled from the church was all part of his plan. He orchestrated everything just so he could get his hands on her. They've heard enough of this talk, so Kiba steps up and one-shots him. Looks like we're finally free from Freed. Surely he won't be coming back. Okay, so here comes my favorite part of the season. The crew pulls up to Deodora, and he goes full on scumbag mode, monologuing all the stuff he's going to do to Asia once he kills all of them. He talks high and mighty about how much power he's got. He even received power from Orphis herself, so nothing can stop him. Issei? Yeah, Issei doesn't give a shit. He beats down Deodora, and this is incredibly satisfying. Even more so cause this is the first time we see Issei where he's not getting beat to a sliver of health before pulling a comeback. It's a completely one-sided fight, and it's perfect that the person that he isn't struggling with is an actual classist scumbag. Issei takes him down and rescues Asia, but before they can leave, Asia wants to have a quick prayer, and while she's doing that, she just gets obliterated. We don't even have a moment to process what had just happened when a new character shows up. This is Shalva, a true descendant of Beelzebub, and the first thing he does is wipe Deodora out of existence. Yup, he's the one who smoked Asia just now. He, along with another devil cursory, the true descendant of Asmodeus, have come to claim their rightful places as the ruler of the underworld, with the power boost from Orphis too. Issei's mind is completely shattered. He can't come to terms with her sudden death. Zenobia too, who is quick to get on the offensive but is no match. This reaction from her shocked me. I knew she and Asia were close, but I didn't think they were this close. Zenobia only showed up last season, but she's really shown a lot of character, outshining a lot of the older characters. And I've gotta admit, she's growing on me. Then again, the moment she pulled out that huge sword, she was already waifu material in my eyes. So Zack shows up and proves why he's the ruler of the underworld, effortlessly wiping out Cursory. But before he can move on, Orphis herself finally shows up. Back to Issei and Co. The immense rage swirling in him has been let out. This sent shivers down my spine. This dragon, no, this monster, this is the Juggernaut Drive. And my god, it is the coolest thing I have seen in the anime so far. Like, I love crazy transformations and I love watching Issei get into balance breaker every time, but the moment I saw this, my mind just went blank. Like, I was at the edge of my seat just gripping with excitement. And I just love a good main character goes berserk moment, and this is being done to perfection. With his monstrous power, he completely overpowers and obliterates Shalba, but he's not transforming back. Just then, Valley and Co show up, with Asia in hand. So what exactly happened was Shalba didn't erase Asia. He simply teleported her into somewhere called the Dimensional Gap, a space outside reality. And the reason why she's with Valley's team is they just so happened to be going through the gap when they saw her floating in there. She's lucky because if she had stayed there any longer, she would have been torn to bits. In an interesting turn, Valley offers to help too. He too releases his Juggernaut drive and is able to divide Issei's power enough for Rias to get in and talk to him, but Valley notes that the energy inside him isn't purely dragon. There seems to be something else inside him, but he's not calming down. That is until Rias is finally able to get through him and snap him out of it. Orpheus was also able to extract the dark energy inside him. We get a touchy reunion with Asia as well as one more huge reveal. A colossal dragon emerges from the Dimensional Gap. This is the Dragon of Dragons, the true Red Dragon God Emperor, Great Red, often called DD. Ah, so that's why it's called Highschool DxD. I knew it. I knew I was right all along. All you guys said it's actually DxD, but I stuck with my DD. I stuck with my D and it finally paid off. I was right all along. You guys owe me an apology. Apologize. Apologize. Got carried away back there. My bad. So yeah. Continuing on, Great Red resides in the Dimensional Gap, the space Orpheus once resided in, and that is the space she wants back. And so Valley has made it his goal to defeat Great Red and return Orpheus back to the Dimensional Gap. The two dragon hosts reach an understanding and become mutual rivals. This would be a great spot to end the season, but this is just episode 9 and we've got 3 more episodes to go through. When I realized that, my mood kind of soured. The season had started out rough but slowly gained its footing back and ended up being just as hyped as the last one, but seeing that there were more to go through after this felt like a push. And to make things even more demoralizing, the last 3 episodes were filler. I've been traumatized by countless filler episodes. I had to sit through Bleach and Naruto, so I tend to avoid them as much as possible. In this day and age, I don't have the time to indulge in content that isn't canon. This is just my personal preference, but since I've decided to stay committed to the series until the end, and because I love you guys, I'll sit through the last 3 episodes, so hitting that subscribe button would actually motivate me right now. Come on, you know you want to. Things kick off with Issei immediately falling into a coma right after that big fight. His Juggernaut drive was incomplete, which kind of messed him up inside. Their only hope now is to have Asia go all out trying to heal not his body, but his heart. That works. I was expecting something more, I don't know, grand. Maybe they jump into his mind and explore some kind of mindscape dungeon, but I guess this is fine. Asia is overjoyed by this and declares her love for Issei with a kiss. Things are finally back to normal yet again, but on the other side of things, seems like the now imprisoned Loki has something up his sleeve. Things really start to get weird when another Issei shows up and seems to take control of Rias, who then attacks her own crew. This was Loki's doing. Remember when, just as he was defeated, he cursed them, specifically Rias and Issei? This curse eats away at their hearts, amplifying whatever bad emotions and trauma they had deep inside. So it starts to make sense why Issei had been frequently thinking of Raynell. She's sort of the manifestation of his doubt and fears. He's afraid of how the girls actually feel about him. You know, the girls who sleep with him in the nude, throw themselves at him, kiss him on several occasions and declare their love for him. Yeah, I guess they just see him as a friend. The real issue now is that fake Issei had taken Rias somewhere and they need to find her. They find out she's being kept in the Dimensional Gap. But the Devil Kings don't have a proper way of traversing the gap, so Issei gets the idea to go meet Valley since the Chaos Brigade have a means of traveling it. Long story short, they meet Valley begging for his help and he actually does. He gives them a way to enter the Dimensional Gap. And they're able to find Rias. Still, she's brainwashed and fights them. They do that thing where they mention all the good times and how much it means to them to snap her out of it, and it actually works. Momentarily. She somehow transforms into a form similar to Issei's balance break. This makes her too strong for the others to handle, so Issei has to step up and fight her. She's only had this form for a few minutes and she's already using it way better than Issei has in 3 seasons. He's getting his ass handed to him real bad, but he's not giving up. Thanks to the power of love and friendship, he releases her from her brainwashing. The reason she was able to transform in the first place was because of a fragment of Issei's Juggernaut drive, which just manifests itself and continues to fight. But Issei powers up and takes that form out for good. Now they just need to find a way out of the space. Luckily, Great Red shows up and they use the portal he created to get out. They wind up in a random beach somewhere, and this is where Rias declares her love for him, and they share a touching moment together. This scene was actually kind of beautiful. And so the season begins to wrap up. Well, that's before Rias makes the Valkyrie Rosewise her second rook. Since Odin kind of left her behind, she didn't really have anywhere else to go, and the Gremry household offers great healthcare insurance, she joins the crew. To end things off, remember how Issei became popular in the underworld, even getting a TV interview appointment? Yeah, that was actually for a kids show. He's super popular among the kids, and now parents have to deal with their kids singing nursery rhymes about groping. Yeah, that's one way to end the season. The last 3 episodes weren't as bad as I expected them to be. I was expecting a Deus Ex Machina that comes associated with filler endings, but there wasn't anything out of the ordinary we aren't already used to. It was fairly standard stuff. If I didn't know this part was filler, I could have passed it off as usual high school stuff. Even if I was to take this as canon material, the arc did fall pretty flat and wasn't as strong or as funny as previous. I guess the highlight for me would be Balance Breaker Rias, but it's short-lived with the fight not being as intense as I'd hoped. All in all, the third season was pretty fun. It didn't start out great but quickly picked itself up, with the middle being amazing. Some parts did feel rushed and left a lot more to be desired, but I wouldn't really call this a bad season. The filler ending did bring it down a bit, but at least it wasn't as egregious as what Blue Exorcist did, so it's forgivable. But this season made me realize the problem the series has that might get even bigger the further the story goes. The ever-increasing character roster. There are way too many recurring characters and even more one-off characters. Why I see this as a problem is that more characters that get added to the story, the less the other characters have anything to do. A bunch of the characters really feel underutilized, like Syra Org, which I can only hope gets a bigger role in the next season. This in turn gives us less to see of the club's almost non-existent dynamics. And to add salt to injury, our main characters are more reactionary than active. They never really kick off the plot, but rather have something happen to them that causes them to retaliate. This was especially true during the Deodora arc. This guy shows up to kidnap Asi and they go rescue her, but are caught in a political power struggle between a new faction of Devil Kings and the old faction. So they are thrown into a fight that doesn't really concern them and has characters like Sir Zex and Azazel take the reins. Even in the second season, during the meeting between the leaders where Kadoria attacked, the club spent most of their time watching the adults fight until Valley showed up. Really makes you question their role in all of this. But perhaps I'm being too critical with the series whose main gimmick is demons and boobies, but I do hope to see things step up in the next season.
Last time on Highschool DxD is what I would normally say, but this time things get kind of weird moving into the 4th season of the anime, bringing in a lot of changes. Changes which I have mixed feelings about. So whether these changes are for the better or worse, I'll leave it up to you to decide. The 4th season of Highschool DxD is one I wasn't initially excited for, considering how the previous season was rough on its storytelling and its inclusion of filler. And to add to my ever-increasing caution was the fact that the 4th season, labeled Highschool DxD Hero, would be done by an entirely different studio. Season 1 to 3 had been animated by Studio TNK, who are behind such greats as School Days and Redo of Healer, and the 4th season has switched over to Studio Passione, who are behind stuff like Citrus and Interspecies Reviewers. Needless to say, both studios were more than capable of handling the series, if you know what I mean. But if you've been watching anime long enough, you know a studio change is often met with a lot of raised eyebrows and rarely delivers the same quality the previous studio put out. One Punch Man is a good example of this. Heck, even now, there are rumors that MAPPA will be animating season 3, which just makes me feel bad for the MAPPA animators even more. You may be wondering why the series went through a studio change. Well, it's a pretty interesting reason. The series author, Ichibe Ishibumi, was pretty mad about the creative liberties TNK took with the story of the 3rd season. Turns out they cut out a bunch of stuff like important character moments, etc., coupled with the addition of filler would make any author rightfully mad. I didn't know authors had that much power in the runnings of an anime, but mad respect to him for deciding how his series goes.
The move to Passione was an attempt to refresh and upgrade the anime, and in one way the anime was going to do that was by updating the art style in order to be more accurate to the light novel. For me, the art style change gave me serious whiplash. I was a big fan of the previous art style. The sharper designs gave the characters more edge that fits right into the demonic world they lived in. The style was pretty reminiscent of early 2000s anime, and it really grew on me. The new designs are a lot more rounder and don't make them look as cool as they used to, but it brings a lot more polish to the series. The colors are brighter and better, and the backgrounds don't look muted and washed out anymore, which all around makes the anime feel a lot more modern. I loved a lot of the new designs. Like Issei, Asuka and Azazel looked better, but then there were some that didn't look quite good to me, like Koneko and Kiba. And then there were some redesigns that hit me with psychic damage. Like Sarah Og went from this to this and became completely unrecognizable. But for me, the absolute worst redesign would have to be Valley. He went from a cool edgelord to a discount Dante twink. But eventually the new designs grew on me, and by the third episode I had fully adjusted to them. And frankly, I welcomed this new change. Okay, so before we get into the story of Highschool DxD Hero, there's one more thing the new studio does, as if as a final act of rebellion. They completely retcon most of the previous season. They snapped that whole balance breaker Rias out of existence and picked things up from the Deodora arc, where Issei activated his Juggernaut drive, went berserk, and humbled Shalba. While most of the events go the same as before, this time, rather than Rias using the power of love or whatever to snap Issei out of it, they bring out a friggin' projector to play his grabbing dragon nursery rhyme to calm him down and use the power of boobies to break him out of it. The rest of the episode goes on like before. Great Red shows up, Valley and Issei become rivals, etc, etc. But then there's also something extra added towards the end. We cut to some mysterious fellow lying in a field of flowers. He's met by fucking Fried Zelsen. That's right, guess Fried was never killed in the previous season, and we just have to accept that he's here now again. Fried informs this person about Shalba's defeat and asks him what he'll do next. He doesn't say much, but he does say his sacred gear, the true Longinus, will propel him forward regardless. How foreboding. All in all, this retcon is a pretty good one, but the only problem I have with it would be the fact that it also retcons Rias' true confession to Issei at the end of the last season. And now we can finally kick off with the true Highschool DxD Hero experience. Our story continues with the club back at the Grammary House in the Underworld. A few fan service is thrown at us, which is normal at this point. The real highlight of this episode would be the sparring match between Issei and Sarah Og. It's a test of strength between the two, and Sarah Og is no pushover. He is lauded as the strongest young devil of their generation. His power is pure strength alone. He doesn't have any special abilities or technique, he's all muscle, having trained his body to the absolute limit. His fights with Issei is crazy. They are just throwing punches at each other and that's it. The fight helps Issei realize where it is he's lacking, and you can see him slowly trying to do better as the fight progresses. It ends with a draw, with them forming a broship, promising each other to have a rematch when Issei gets stronger. The first episode mainly sets out to really distinct itself from the previous studio. Studio Passione proved that they weren't here to play around, and it shows. This small bout between the two of them was a fight that was already leagues ahead of all the other fights in terms of animation. The fight had actual flow and fluidity, and you could feel the impact of every hit. It's setting the bar for what to expect this season, and it's got me hyped for whatever the anime would be throwing my way. With the fight over, the crew head back to the human world. Issei's class has to prepare for a trip to Kyoto, which is where the next arc will be taking place. What wacky antics will Issei get into in Kyoto? We'll just have to find out. On the train to Kyoto, we find out that Issei can actually access something like a Sacred Gear spirit world, which hosts all the previous wielders of the gear. Yeah, kind of like the Avatar in their past lives, but he can't exactly talk to them because they are sort of in a vegetative state, well, save for one user. This is Elsha, the strongest woman to wield the Sacred Gear. She introduces herself to Issei and talks about another user, the strongest man to wield the Sacred Gear, with a notable feat of defeating the White Dragon twice, but he has no intention of revealing himself to Issei right now. He had Elsha deliver a box to him, the box that is said to hold his potential, power that, if he's not careful, would destroy him. But with his resolve firm, he opens it, and he's suddenly brought back to reality. Nothing really happens and Issei doesn't feel any different, but before he can think about it, his thought process is interrupted by his friends groping each other out of nowhere. His friend, Matsuda, was suddenly overcome with the strong urge to fondle some fun bags, and he couldn't help himself grabbing the nearest person. Trust me, this scene is super important. The class arrives at Kyoto and are immediately met by a scene of yet another man trying to grope a woman. I bet you can already tell that this has something to do with Issei's potential. How little manifests, we'll just have to find out. Later on, Issei and friends tour Kyoto but are suddenly attacked by a fox girl who accuses them of taking her mother. A fight breaks out and the crew are able to hold them off, confused about the whole misunderstanding going on. Later that night, they are summoned by Azazel and Seraphol to explain what exactly happened. The crew that attacked them were yokai, whose leader had gone missing, so it explains why they are on edge. As you'd expect, the one behind it is the Chaos Brigade, specifically their hero faction. Herein lies the first problem that comes from the aftermath from all the stuff the previous season had cut out. The hero faction of the Chaos Brigade was first brought up this season, so if you haven't read the source material, like me, you'd be confused about it too. It feels like a lot of things are missing, with them referencing events that happened off screen and everyone just has to go with it. It created a weird case for me because it felt like I had accidentally skipped out on some episodes. They do try to do something with the hero faction by showing us a flashback at the start of an episode, but it's so short and doesn't really do or explain anything, so it's just kind of awkward. So throughout my watch through, I had mild confusion, and it only gets even more confusing. Later on, the crew encountered the mystery man with despair from before. This is Soso, a descendant of Soso from the Romance of Three Kingdoms, and he launches an attack on them. He takes on Azazel while the kids take on the goons. There are two characters of note here. One is a boy named Leonardo who wields a sacred gear that lets him summon anti-devil monsters, and the other is Freed. But wait, that's not actually Freed. He looks like Freed, he's a known exorcist and top class knight of the church like Freed, he even defected from the church like Freed. But he isn't Freed. No, this is Siegfried. They are entirely different people. And I couldn't help but be even more confused. Even more so because the other characters don't really acknowledge the fact that he looks like Freed, so it had me scratching my head wondering if Freed was a filler character all this time. But hopefully, we'll get an answer later. Soso and Azazel fight a bit more before he reveals his motive. He and the hero faction simply want to test their limits and see how far they can go, taking down demons, fallen angels and gods while remaining purely human. Their fight is interrupted by a newcomer, Lafay Pendragon, who's here to punish Soso on behalf of Valley. She's also a big fan of Issei and his perverted antics. The fight doesn't go on any longer, with the bad guys leaving for now, declaring that they'll be launching another attack later that night, so the crew has to prepare. They form their battle plan, and just before they set out, Azazel presents Issei with an orb he had gotten from yet another random man who was overcome with the strong urge to grope chests. The strange orb is actually Issei's potential that had popped out of him when he opened that box a few episodes back. So his potential had actually gone around Kyoto filling as much chests as he could before finally making his way back to him. What new power will this orb bring? I'm excited to find out. After this, Issei gets sort of an existential crisis. He's been wondering for a while now what makes a hero a hero. Being a hero was one of the goals he had ever since he was a kid, but after becoming a devil, he's not sure if that's what he wants to be anymore. Azazel gives him some pep talk, telling him just to keep on being himself and he'll eventually figure out what it is he wants to be, future Harem King aside. It doesn't take too long before we're thrown into the action. The crew gets split up, and due to the fact that Rias is absent, Issei will assume the role of king for now. He comes face to face with an opponent who showed up in that shoehorn flashback a while back, but this time, he's stronger. He's got the power to control shadows. Issei takes care of him pretty well until he goes off on a monologue. He talks about how sacred gear users are seen as lesser people, which is odd because throughout the anime we've never seen sacred gear users be treated as such. It's one thing for the bad guy to talk about his personal experience, but it's another to make them seem like it's the general way all users are treated. Anyway, Issei takes care of him easily and regroups with the rest. Also, Zenovia's sword, the Durandal, got modified and it looks even cooler. Gotta love a cooler big sword, am I right? They come face to face with the bad guys. Soso reveals his true objective. To have the Fox Yokai release so much power, it summons Great Red into their dimension, that way, Office can move back to the dimensional gap. Now the fighting breaks out, everyone gets their own opponents. The bad guys reveal their Sacred Gear and Balance Breakers. There's Siegfried with his Sacred Gear Chaos Edge Ravage, Jeanne d'Arc with her gear Blade Blacksmiths, the holy version of Sword Birth, and Heracles with the detonation mighty comments. Issei is getting folded once again and has to use a full restore, but he's not going down just yet and pulls off a cold comeback, taking out one of his opponent's arms. But Soso has a full restore and heals himself back to full health too. In this very moment, every video game boss who has ever restored their HP in the middle of a fight rejoiced. Talk about unfair. Issei is outclassed yet again. He doesn't even have time to get back up when the other bad guys return with his fallen comrades in hand. They've been utterly defeated, with Issei being the only one standing. He laments on his weakness. No matter how hard he tries, no matter how big he talks, he's never really able to save anyone when it matters. In the midst of his frustration, Elsha comes in once again and gives him a good pep talk, reminding him of who he is, the Red Dragon Emperor, the Grabbing Dragon, and it's time to release that potential within him. His potential calls forth that which belongs to him, that which he treasures, the strongest weapon in his arsenal, Rias, and her massive fun bags. I can't take this anime seriously sometimes. So Issei is able to get an insane power boost which lets him unlock new powers. Throughout the fight, he changes through other multiple forms based on other chess pieces to completely overwhelm Soso. This new power has now given him the ability to promote and swap through other pieces by himself without the need for the king to assign enemy lines. Can't say I'm too fond of this new upgrade cause it kind of strips the whole servant chess piece system which I was really fond of away from him and making him kind of broken. But then again, I guess that's what a balance breaker does, breaking balance. And Soso calls him out on this. He pulls off what they refer to as an illegal move which breaks the rules of the evil piece system. Their fight kind of ends there because the bad guys have completed their objective. A portal rips open and from it emerges one of the great dragon kings. Not Great Red, but the mischievous dragon, Yu Long. And with it comes the great victorious fighting Buddha, Sun Wukong. As expected, he is way too much for the brigade to handle and styles on them with ease. They're about to retreat but Issei isn't done yet. He's able to land one more shot at Soso, which pisses him off. He's about to release some crazy power, but is stopped by Siegfried just then. They're really at their limits and can't afford to keep fighting, especially with the Monkey King around. Just before they leave, Soso, pride hurt, commands Issei to get stronger than Valley so that he can show off the real power of his Longinus spear and vows to take him down. That is yet another rival added to the list. So they're able to rescue the leader of the yokai and get a happy ending. All's well that ends well for the crew and they head back to Tokyo, and so the curtains close on the Kyoto arc. This arc was fine. My main gripe with it comes from the choppy way everything was handled narratively, which once again I have to mention how the previous studio really did not do the series any justice. The frequent reference to things that happen that anime onlys don't know about gives me intense FOMO, and this is whole arcs we're talking about. In one scene, Issei casually mentions the fight he had with Saji in a waiting game against the Seichi house without even a flashback to accompany it. It makes me mildly upset that we miss out on what might have been an important character moment for people like Saji, and it brings down the whole experience. I get that's usually the case when adapting things like light novels, considering the amount of text and content that's put into each volume couldn't possibly be adapted into a 12-episode season, but it still sucks that as an anime only, I feel like I'm getting the shorter end of the stick. And do you really expect me to read a light novel? Me? Read? With an attention span comparable to a goldfish? I apologize. That was an insult to goldfishes all around the world. But yeah, so far the season has been kind of iffy for me. It also doesn't help that the pattern the anime has been going through is starting to get stale. Just how many more fights does Issei have to almost lose before he can finally hold his own against anyone? We see it happen every time, and no matter how many crazy and hilarious power-up he gets, he still can't keep up with the meta and gets power crept. And adding to the repetition is having a newcomer show up in the middle of the fight to change the tides of battle or something like that, which just leads to the fight ending. It's always the same and doesn't leave me excited for fights to come, but regardless, I do love the ever expanding world of the series and the direction it's going. Before I move on to the next arc, now would be a good time to hit that like button if you've been enjoying the video so far, and if you want to see more stuff, consider subscribing too. It would really help a lot as well as keep me motivated to put out more videos like this for you guys. Cool, back to the story. Issei has really gotten popular in the underworld as the grabbing dragon who's out there hosting live events for all the kids to see him in his perverted glory. The usual fan service stuff happens, this time with Irina joining the fray, and Rise's younger sister, Ravel, has also transferred to his school, so another girl to fall for Issei. After this, Issei and Rias are requested to go to Sarah Org's place where they meet with his bedridden mother. They are there because they want to see if they can use Issei's power of TT translation to see if they can reach his mother who's been in a coma for years. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, but we do get some backstory on Sarah Org. He was born into the Bale family as their heir, but he lacked any kind of demonic power whatsoever, which led him to be scorned by his family. So he trained his body to the absolute limit, having the rawest physical power of any young devil ever. He and Issei share a moment where they vow to give it their all in their upcoming racing game against each other. It really builds up hype. The crew have a training session where they come up with some new battle strategies, and then afterwards attend a press conference between the Gremory and Bale houses, which is mostly just there for comedic purposes and to make fun of the fact that Issei needs Rias' boobs to power up. This light-hearted scene is followed by a pretty steamy one. Issei and Rias have wound up in his sauna together and she goes in for the kill, ready to make a move and turn Issei into a man. But Issei messes up. He calls her president, which isn't something she likes, and leaves. Up until the 4th season, the dub has been handling things differently. In the first 3 seasons, Issei had always referred to Rias as Rias in the dub, but in Japanese he's always called her president while he calls everyone else by their first names. She's never really liked this because of her obvious feelings for him. She feels he can't see her as Rias, which is what has created a wall between them. In Japanese culture, you know how much of a big deal being called by your first name is, but in the 4th season, Issei had stuck to the Japanese context of calling her president all the time, and the moment this change happened, I knew exactly what was coming next. Still on the topic of the dub, I gotta give praise to the direction the dub takes things. Aside from being all around funnier, it feels weirdly natural. You may find this weird, but I watched it dubbed with the Japanese subs on to get the best of both worlds. And the sub tends to just be filled with a lot of the, how would I put it, filler conversations that anime can be known for. But the dub tends to spice things up, which was always welcomed in my eyes. I really hope the dub can continue this energy moving forward. Anyway, things are kind of awkward between Rias and Issei now, which culminates in Rias asking what exactly she is to Issei. His response, he starts by calling her the president, which once again hurts her, so she leaves. Issei is super confused by this, and everyone gives him flack for it. I mean, yeah, the fact that he doesn't seem to understand that Rias loves him, despite everything they've been through, is kind of annoying, but everyone else seems to understand his screw up and understand Rias' feelings for him, and they look at him like he's committed some act no human ever should. While I can understand this, it just feels kind of silly, considering he's reprimanded by the same girls that are all fighting for him and his seed. I can't really blame Issei for his thought process though. He sees himself as her servant, her pawn. Yeah, he gets special treatment from her, but I guess to him, that's just her being his master. He's thought about actually trying to take things seriously with her, but he's been too afraid to want to actually make a move. The other girls come in and give him a much needed heart-to-heart. I can't show this because they get topless, and literally any frame from this scene would get this video instantly flagged. They make him come to terms with the real reason why he hasn't reciprocated or made a move on Rias or any of them really, despite how much they show their love for him. Issei is traumatized by Raynell, the first girl he was ever with, the first girl to make him believe he was loved, lied to him and straight up killed him and later on Asia. That kind of betrayal cuts deep into his heart and he never really got over it, even after taking her down with his own hands. It's a pain he never wants to experience again, hence why he's never really done anything with all the other girls. They understand this and all reassure and declare their undying love for him. Despite all the naked women on screen, this scene is probably one of, if not, the most wholesome moments in the entire anime, and I really did like it. This moment helps Issei strengthen his feelings and resolve for Rias, but it's going to be a while before we get to see how their teen drama resolves. The crew are back in the underworld, making their way to the arena where their rating game will be held. Turns out this match is a really big deal, with a lot of powerful people having their eyes on it. One of those people being Hades himself. The fight is slated for later that evening, so the club has a bit of free time. It's during this time that Riser shows up for the first time since season 1 and looks like he's been humbled, giving Rhea some much needed advice on believing in her family. He also declares to Issei that he will have his payback and the next time they just happen to go up against each other, forming yet another rivalry. After this, Issei meets up with Sir Zex, who shows him a video of all his young fans who have been rooting for him and sending him words of encouragement. Sir Zex tells him that despite all the politics involved in the upcoming match, Issei shouldn't focus on all that, but instead focus on the dreams and inspiration he is to all the little devil kids all over the underworld. It's finally game time. The air is electric with excitement, but before we can get into the fighting, a few rules are explained to us. The main gist of it is that every round, each king will roll dice. The total number on each king's die will determine the total number of points both kings get, which in turn determines the kind of unit they can send out. Each unit is worth a different amount of points. A pawn is worth 1, knights and bishops are worth 3, rook 5 and queen 9. So depending on the die roll, a king could send out a rook and a knight, etc, etc. In the case of Issei, since he takes up 8 pawn pieces, he's worth 8 points. With the rules out of the way, the die are cast and the first roll is a 3. Both parties send out their knights. Rhea sends out Kiba and Sarah Org sends out a literal fucking knight. It's a cool fight. Gotta say, this is the first anime where I've seen a horse flash step, so I'm already digging the fights. Kiba is going all in and releases his new balance break, Glory Dragon Troopers. They're an army of CGI swords wielding swords. That's it. Thanks to this, Kiba is able to emerge victorious, effortlessly too. The next fight is Koneko and Frostweiss versus the enemy's knight and rook. The fight is a quick one with the Grammary team winning yet again. However, Koneko got knocked out, but a win is a win. That's 0-2 now. The next match is Sarah Org's bishop against Issei. He specifically chose his bishop because she has an ability that can specifically counter Issei's perverted techniques. It's stripping. Her technique is stripping. That's it. I'm amazed at such a simple yet effective move. And to make it even funnier is the commentary behind it. How does this fight end? She makes the grave mistake of trying to strip from bottom to top instead of top to bottom, which enrages Issei and fires her for her lack of courtesy. Next match, Gaspar and Zenobia against Sarah Org's next bishop and rook. The fight is a big character moment for Gaspar and proves his resolve as well as show just what he's capable of. Zenobia gets her powers temporarily sealed and so Gaspar has to buy time. He tanks a lot of the hits before managing to hold out long enough for Zenobia to return. He shows just how much of a man he is, doing what needs to be done in order for the Grammary house to get a win. And he's successful. The match is over in one fell swoop from Zenobia. The next matchup isn't what I expected. Sarah Org goes up next, but instead of Issei, he's up against Kiba, Zenobia, and Frostweiss. He releases his limiters and proves why he's the strongest young devil around. They try to put up a good fight, even able to take off one of his arms, but that doesn't even slow him down. This man is an absolute beast. I almost feel bad for the club the way he takes them down, winning that round. And don't worry about his arm. Thanks to the Phoenix Tear, which each team is assigned one of, he's able to fully restore. Watching the defeat of his comrades fills Issei with rage, and he steps up for the next match, and quickly takes the opponent down in a single hit without even giving the opponent the chance to retaliate. But that isn't exactly what happened. Sarah Org had forced her to retreat because if that attack had hit her, let's just say she would have ended up on live leaks to traumatize a lot of 11-year-olds with unrestricted internet access. So the climax of the fight draws close. It's only Sarah Org and his pawn left, and it's only Rias, Issei and Asia left on the Grammary team. Oh, I forgot to mention that Akino had gotten knocked out before because of the enemy caught her off guard and redirected her lightning. The fight was over so fast I forgot to register it in my brain. Sarah Org can feel the intensity of Issei's seriousness and he wants to reciprocate. He chooses to ditch the rules and propose that they have an all-out brawl between the remaining characters. The viewers, the fans, and even the organizing committee all agree to this, increasing the hype of the game. And so, the final battle is here. Issei and Rias are up against Sarah Org and his pawn. Asia was opted out of the match. It's a 2v2 and Issei wastes no time in throwing the first punch. The pawn on the other hand turns into an actual frigging golden lion, which is also a sacred gear. This is the Nemean lion, the same lion that Hercules fought as part of the 12 labors, and after its defeat it was sealed into a sacred gear, becoming one of the 13 Longinus, and Rheas is fighting it. Issei and Sarah Og slug it out, and Issei is actually able to deal significant damage to him. But oh no, Rheas could not take on the lion and has been gravely wounded. Guess they will have to use their designated Phoenix Tear to heal her, increasing their stakes. Oh golly gee, who would have ever seen this coming? The lion asks Sarah Og to wield him so he can get a power up, and Sarah Og refuses because that kind of power would only be used in case of an emergency. Issei pulls out a Goku and wants him to wield it so that he can beat him at his strongest, cause it wouldn't mean anything if he couldn't. Sarah Og agrees and balance breaks with the lion, getting a very shiny suit of armor called Regulus Ray Leather Rex. And this form hits Issei so hard he gets sent back to the Sacred Gear mind space. The past users want him to use his Juggernaut drive. They want him to succumb to the rage, resentment and hate welling up inside him. He almost succumbs to this, but the words of his fans and their chants for boobies reach him and he slowly fights the urge to succumb to the malice. Still in the mind space, one of the previous White Dragon users show up. You may be wondering why. Well, remember that time Issei fused a part of Valley's armor into him? Yeah, this is the personification of that fragment and he offers his help. Thanks to this, Issei is able to reject the malice and curses from the past users and achieve a new form. It's similar to a Juggernaut drive, but not quite. It gives off a bright red aura, an aura that comes from his one true love, Rheas. This is a Cardinal Crimson promotion, adopting the powers of a queen. This is also when he boldly declares his love for Rheas right there on national television. And now you know the real fight begins. It's an all-out slugfest and Issei is actually winning, sending Sarah Og flying. Just as it looks like he's about to accept defeat, the spirit of his mother shows up. She gives him words of encouragement, telling him not to give up and fight for his dream, a real shonen moment. Sarah Og keeps fighting because this is really all he has. If he loses, there will be nothing left for him. He's already been looked down on by his family because of his lack of demonic power, so if he does lose, he'll get scorned even more and get everything taken from him, stripping him of his ability to fight for a better demon world, one free of nepotism. It's a really sad situation that despite him being the strongest young devil around, he still doesn't think it's enough and could lose it all in an instant. Despite all the hits taken, Sarah Og hasn't gone down and Issei has finally run out of juice, but he's not going to stop there. Just as he's about to continue, he stops. Sarah Og stands in front of him, unconscious. He's been throwing punches all this time, unconscious. A real Chad to the end. Issei is moved by this. Watching someone fight for his dreams till he lost consciousness moved him to tears. Hell, it moved me to tears. And in an amazing sign of respect, he embraces his rival, closing the curtains on this fight. To me, this takes the top spot as the best fight in the series so far. After this, the two wake up in an infirmary and are visited by Sir Zex. He informs Issei that he'll soon be promoted to a mid-ranking devil, along with Akeno and Kiba. After this, they're back in the human realm for their school festival. Azeto pulls Issei aside to inform him of the recent development in the underworld. The high-ranking devils that were backing Sarah Og have pulled out from supporting him, which sucks, but he'll just have to deal with it and move forward. The season ends with Issei finally getting some alone time with Rheas. This is it. This is when he confesses his love for Rheas and calls her by name. She's moved to tears and tells him how she feels the same way too. Just as they're about to lock lips, they get interrupted by the rest of the club. They tease them, but really they just show their support for their relationship. But the other girls make it clear that this won't stop them from making moves on Issei. They've well accepted their harem position. Anyway, the two are finally able to kiss, not as master and servant, but as lovers. The wholesomeness isn't over as back at Sarah Og's place, his mother has finally awoken from her long coma. It almost brings a tear to your eye watching her hold her son again. We're left with a final teaser for what's to come. In a flashback, just after the fight with Soso, Azazel had met up with the Heavenly Emperor Indra and confronts him about knowing and hiding Soso's mere existence. But Indra doesn't support the brigade though. He's actually a fan of Issei, however he leaves Azazel with a warning. If Issei does become too powerful, he'll be forced to step in and erase his very soul. An ominous way to end the season. The 4th season of High School DxD was a real fun watch. The studio change had caught me off guard, but I quickly adjusted to it. It was an upgrade in every way from the previous season, and that's a rare case when it comes to anime changing studios. The better animation was the icing on the cake, as fights actually felt like fights and not slightly better slideshows. You can tell the studio really handled it with care, and I'm also glad that very little CGI was used, especially for the character models. Like, I half expected the complex designs of Balance Breaker Issei and powered up Syra Og to be done in CGI, but they came out looking really good, even with all the different Issei forms. Another aspect the season got an upgrade in was in its fan service. They generally looked better, but shockingly enough, there was a lot less fan service in this season, which I think made them better. Back then, we would get bare-chested shots at least once per episode. Even in fights, women would have their clothes blasted off, which got pretty annoying most of the time, but then this season, unless Issei was using dress break, clothes remained intact, which I am thankful for. The only time we got full-on fan service was when it was consensual. You might not realize it, but it appears that the series is slowly leaning more into the shonen than the ecchi, which makes it a lot more enjoyable in my opinion. I have no problems with the anime on a production standpoint and would love to see more of it if we ever do get a 5th season. But it's been almost 6 years since the season came out and one can only wonder when it will be coming. But I really do hope if a new season does come, it's able to shake up the formula because the repetition is really starting to show, which could end up becoming stale for me. But the characters, specifically Issei, really helped to make the story fun and a lot more engaging. Still wish you got a lot more out of character interactions, but at this point I'm used to it. High School DxD has an incredibly grand story and just keeps getting better with each season, but at the same time it doesn't quite feel like there's a set direction the story is going in. We get introduced to all these new characters and plot points 4 seasons in, and we still don't know where exactly all this is leading up to. It all feels like one big setup and does help the story feel grand, but we're yet to reach a truly pivotal moment in the story. But I'm sure when that does happen, it'll blow my mind. For now, I'll just join all the other anime onlys in waiting for the next season because reading scares me. Thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I guess the end of this series. It has been a long and crazy journey getting here, but it was fun nonetheless. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if for some strange reason you started this season to season review from this video first, what is wrong with you? But then at the same time, check out the rest. This has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.